He came home early for the first time in 18 months. Just wanted to grab files he'd forgotten. 5 minutes in and out. That's all it was supposed to be. But when Marcus Chen pulled through the iron gates of his Connecticut estate at 2:47 in the afternoon, rain hammering against his windshield, he saw something that stopped his heart. A woman running across his lawn, soaked to the bone, stumbling through mud and flooding grass. And in her arms, wrapped in what looked like his own bedroom blanket, was his son, his paralyzed son, being carried through a storm like something out of a nightmare. Marcus slammed the brakes. His Mercedes skidded on the wet driveway. He threw open the door, didn't even kill the engine, just ran. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouted over the rain. The woman, Elena, the new caregiver he'd hired 3 weeks ago, turned. Her face was streaked with rain and tears, her hair plastered to her cheeks, but her grip on his son never wavered. "Mr. Chen," her voice cracked, "Daniel's burning up. Fever spiked to 104. I called 911, but they said 40 minutes in this storm. I called you 12 times. Marcus grabbed his phone. 12 missed calls, all from the house line. "The car," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "Why didn't you take the car?" Elena's eyes flashed with something, anger, desperation, both. "I don't have keys to any of your cars, Mr. Chen. You never gave them to me." The words hit like a fist. She was right. Marcus stared at his son, 7 years old, small for his age, wrapped in that blanket, his face flushed red, his small body shaking. And this woman, this stranger he'd hired and watched through cameras and suspected of every possible betrayal, had been carrying his 50-pound child for God knows how long, through rain and cold, trying to save him. "Get in the car," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "Now." They put Daniel in the back seat. Elena climbed in beside him, cradling his head in her lap. Marcus drove like a man possessed, taking corners too fast, running lights, not caring about anything except the hospital 12 minutes away. "How long has he been like this?" Marcus asked, eyes on the road, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Started this morning," Elena said, her voice steady now, focused. "Low-grade fever at breakfast. I gave him acetaminophen. By noon it was climbing. I called the pediatrician. She said, bring him in if it hit 103. At 2 o'clock it was 104 and rising. Why didn't you call me earlier?" "I did, Mr. Chen." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I called you at 11:30. Your assistant said you were in meetings. Couldn't be disturbed." Marcus's stomach turned to ice. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Nurses, doctors, IVs, monitors. They took Daniel back immediately. Elena stayed in the waiting room, soaked, shivering, refusing the blanket a nurse offered her. Marcus paced back and forth, his $3,000 suit dripping water on sterile floors, his mind replaying that image. Over and over, Elena running through his lawn, carrying his son, fighting to save him while Marcus sat in a boardroom, arguing over quarterly projections. An hour later, a doctor emerged. "Mr. Chen," Marcus spun around. "How is he?" "Severe kidney infection. Another hour and we'd be looking at sepsis." The doctor's voice was calm but serious. "He's on IV antibiotics now. We'll keep him overnight for observation, but he's going to be okay." Marcus's knees nearly buckled. "Can I see him?" "Of course. Room 304. Daniel was asleep when Marcus walked in, small and pale against white hospital sheets, an IV in his tiny arm. Monitors beeping softly. Marcus sat in the chair beside the bed and put his face in his hands. Elena stood in the doorway, still soaked, still shivering. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. She didn't respond right away. Then, "I'm going to call a car, head home and change." "Elena, I'll be back in an hour to sit with him through the night." "You don't have to." "Yes, Mr. Chen." Her voice cut through the room like a blade. "I do." She turned and walked away. left Marcus sitting there alone with his son and the crushing weight of what had almost happened, what he'd almost lost, because he'd been too busy to answer his phone. Marcus Chen hadn't always been this way, cold, distant, hiding behind 18-hour workdays and quarterly earnings reports. 5 years ago, he'd been different, present, human, a man who left the office at 6 to make it home for dinner, who read bedtime stories and played catch in the backyard and believed that family mattered more than empires. Then his wife died, Sophia Chen, 34 years old, brain aneurysm, no warning. She was laughing at breakfast, making Daniel's favorite pancakes, and by lunch, she was gone. The doctors said she probably didn't feel anything, that it happened too fast for pain. Marcus didn't find that comforting. Daniel was 3, too young to understand. He kept asking when Mommy was coming home, kept setting a place for her at dinner, kept leaving drawings on her pillow. Marcus didn't know how to explain death to a 3-year-old, didn't know how to explain it to himself. So he worked, threw himself into Chen Technologies with a vengeance, built his company from 40 million to 400 million in 3 years. Forbes called him a visionary. Business Insider ran a cover story, "The Billionaire Who Never Sleeps." What they didn't write about was the man who came home at midnight to a dark house, who paid caregivers to raise his son, who couldn't remember the last time he'd actually sat down and talked to Daniel about anything other than medical appointments and therapy schedules. Because 6 months after Sophia died, there was another blow, the accident. Daniel had been in the car with Marcus's brother, Uncle James, who was watching him for the weekend. A drunk driver ran a red light, T-boned them at 60 miles per hour. James walked away with bruises. Daniel's spine fractured. At L1, paralyzed from the waist down, permanently. The doctors were very clear about that word, permanent. His spinal cord was severed, Mr. Chen, not bruised, not compressed, severed. I'm sorry, but your son will never walk again. Marcus had nodded, signed the paperwork, asked about the best wheelchairs money could buy. Then he went home, locked himself in his office, and didn't come out for 2 days. That was 18 months ago. Since then, Daniel had become a ghost in his own home. A small, quiet boy who sat in his custom wheelchair, $47,000, German engineering, the best available, and stared out windows at a world he couldn't access anymore. He didn't complain, didn't cry, just existed. And Marcus? Marcus built higher walls, worked longer hours, convinced himself that providing the best medical care, the best equipment, the best everything was the same as being a father. It wasn't. But admitting that would mean facing the truth, that he'd failed his son twice. First, by not being there when Sophia died. Second, by not being there when Daniel needed him most. So Marcus did what he did best. He controlled what he could control: money, staff, schedules, surveillance. And he told himself it was enough. The cameras were installed 3 months after the 5th caregiver quit. Marcus had trusted her. Margaret, 62 years old, 20 years of experience, glowing references. She'd seemed perfect until she wasn't. He came home early one Tuesday, rare, but he'd forgotten his laptop, and found Daniel alone in his room, crying, soaked through. He'd wet himself and been sitting in it for over an hour. Margaret was in the kitchen, on her phone, laughing with someone about her weekend plans. Marcus fired her on the spot. Then he installed cameras everywhere: living room, hallway, kitchen, Daniel's bedroom, therapy room, even the gardens, though Daniel never went outside anymore. 47 cameras total, all feeding to an app on Marcus's phone, all recording 24 hours a day. His head of security had raised an eyebrow. "That's extensive, sir." "I need to know what's happening in my house when I'm not there. Might I suggest simply hiring better? Install them." The cameras went live on a Monday. By Friday, Marcus had watched 70 hours of footage. He told himself it was due diligence, protecting his son, making sure the new caregiver number 6, was doing her job. But the truth was darker than that. Marcus was obsessed. Every night after work, sometimes until 2 or 3 a.m., he'd sit in his office with 3 monitors glowing in the darkness. He'd watch Daniel eat breakfast, watch him sit in his wheelchair during therapy, watch him stare out the window, watch him sleep. It was the only way Marcus could be present in his son's life without actually being present, without having to see the disappointment in Daniel's eyes when he asked, "Are you staying home today, Dad?" And Marcus said no, without having to feel the weight of his failures every time he looked at that wheelchair. The cameras became Marcus's window into a life he'd abandoned, a way to witness without participating, to observe without connecting. He watched Caregiver 6 for 3 weeks before she stole $2,000 from his wallet and disappeared. Caregiver 7 lasted a month before Marcus caught her on camera giving Daniel expired medication. She claimed it was an honest mistake. Marcus didn't care. She was gone. 8, 9, 10. They blurred together, each one promising to care for Daniel, each one failing in different ways. One spent more time on Instagram than with his son. Another left Daniel alone for hours while she met her boyfriend in the guest house. One tried to sell photos of Daniel to tabloids. Billionaire's crippled son, a life of luxury and suffering. Marcus paid $50,000 to bury the story. After that, he added background checks, criminal history, financial records, social media deep dives, references verified by private investigators. He built a fortress around his son, not to protect Daniel, to protect himself from being hurt again, from trusting again, from hoping that anyone could actually care about his boy without an ulterior motive. By the time Caregiver 11 walked out, complained the house was too depressing, that Daniel was too much work, Marcus had stopped believing in good people. He believed in surveillance, documentation, control, and he believed that eventually everyone betrays you. Elena Morales walked through Marcus Chen's front door on a gray Tuesday morning in October. She was 29. No wedding ring. Resume said she'd worked in elder care for 6 years, currently studying nursing at community college, available full-time. Marcus had her investigated anyway. The report came back clean, almost too clean. No criminal record, no debt, no suspicious social media posts. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood, drove a 15-year-old Honda, sent money to her mother in Texas every month. The only notable thing, her younger brother had died 3 years ago. Drowning accident. She'd been the one to find him. Marcus noted it, filed it away. Trauma made people either more compassionate or more broken. He'd find out which. Their interview lasted 12 minutes. Marcus sat behind his desk. Elena sat across from him, back straight, hands folded in her lap. She didn't fidget, didn't fill silence with nervous chatter, just waited. "You understand this is a live-in position," Marcus said, not looking up from her file. "Yes, sir." "Daniel requires round-the-clock care. His medical needs are extensive. Catheter management, bowel program, pressure sore prevention, physical therapy exercises twice daily. I'm familiar with spinal cord injury care." Marcus glanced up. Her eyes were steady, brown, direct. 11 caregivers have been terminated from this position in the past year. "I read that in the disclosure. Why do you think you'll be different?" Elena was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because I'm not here to fix your son, Mr. Chen. I'm here to care for him. There's a difference." Marcus stared at her. That was either the most manipulative thing he'd heard or the most genuine. He couldn't tell which. "The position pays $45,000 annually, plus room and board. You'll have Sundays off. No guests allowed in the house. No personal phone calls during working hours. He slid a contract across the desk. All areas of the home are monitored by security cameras for Daniel's safety. You'll be recorded at all times except in your private quarters. Most people flinched at that part. Elena just nodded. I understand. You will follow the medical protocol exactly as prescribed by Daniel's doctors. No improvising, no experimental treatments, no false hope. Her jaw tightened slightly. Mr. Chen, I'm not here to give false hope, but I'm also not here to give up on him. The doctors have given their prognosis. It's permanent. I understand what the doctors said. Then we're clear. Perfectly clear, sir. Marcus signed the contract, slid it to her. You start Monday. Elena signed without reading it, stood, extended her hand. Marcus shook it. Her grip was firm, warm. Her hands had calluses, working hands, hands that had cared for people before. He told himself that meant nothing. After she left, Marcus pulled up the security footage from the interview, watched it 3 times, studied her face, her micro-expressions, looking for the tell, the angle, the manipulation. He found nothing. That worried him most of all. Elena met Daniel on her first day. Marcus watched through the cameras from his office downtown, his phone propped on his desk, his actual work ignored. She knocked on Daniel's bedroom door, waited. No one ever waited. Come in, Daniel's small voice said. Elena opened the door slowly. Daniel sat in his wheelchair by the window, same position Marcus always saw him in, staring out at nothing. Hi, Daniel, I'm Elena. I'm going to be taking care of you for a while. Daniel didn't turn around. Okay. Most caregivers would launch into their routine at this point, start talking about schedules and medications and therapy exercises, treating Daniel like a task list. Elena did something different. She walked over to the window and looked out at what he was looking at. Stood there beside him, silent, just sharing the view. After a long moment, the oak tree? Daniel's head turned slightly. What? Are you watching the oak tree? The one with the tire swing? Daniel nodded slowly. I used to have a tire swing. My dad hung it from a pecan tree in our backyard. Elena's voice was soft. I'd swing on it for hours. Thought if I went high enough I could touch the sky. Did you? Touch the sky? Elena smiled. No, but I got close enough to see things differently. That's almost as good. Daniel was quiet. Then, I used to swing, before. I know. I can't anymore. Not the same way. No. Daniel looked up at her. Really looked. You're not going to tell me I can still do everything? No, because that would be a lie. Elena knelt down so they were eye level. You can't do some things anymore. That's true. That's real, and it's okay to be sad about that. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. No caregiver had ever said that before. They all pushed toxic positivity. You're so strong. You can do anything. Never give up. But Elena gave him something rarer, permission to grieve. But you can do other things, she continued gently. Different things, maybe better things. We just have to figure out what those are. Daniel wiped his eyes. The other ladies said I needed to think positive. The other ladies weren't me. That night, Marcus watched the footage 4 times. He told himself he was checking for red flags, signs of manipulation, grooming behavior. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was watching because for the first time in 18 months, his son had cried, had shown emotion, had connected with another human being, and Marcus didn't know how to feel about that. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. This is just the beginning, and what happens next will break your heart and put it back together. Trust me. Marcus told himself he wasn't obsessed, but every night for 2 weeks straight, He sat in his office until 3 a.m. watching footage of Elena with Daniel. She broke protocol on day 3. The physical therapist had left detailed instructions, passive range of motion exercises, 15 minutes twice daily, clinical and precise. Move the joints through their prescribed arcs. Document progress. Don't deviate. Elena followed the instructions for exactly 1 session. Then she started adding things. Marcus watched her on camera one afternoon, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Daniel's wheelchair. She had his left leg in her hands, moving it slowly through a walking pattern. Left, right, like she was teaching his muscles to remember something they'd never learned in this new body. "What are you doing?" Daniel asked. "Gait training," Elena said simply. "Your legs don't work the way they used to, but your brain still remembers how to walk. We're just reminding it." "The doctors said I'll never walk again." "The doctors said your spinal cord was severed, that's true. But brains are incredible things, Daniel. Sometimes they find new pathways, new ways around damage." She kept moving his leg, steady, patient. "We won't know what's possible unless we try." Marcus's finger hovered over his phone. He should call her. Stop this. She was giving Daniel false hope, setting him up for devastating disappointment. But Daniel's face. His son was watching Elena's hands move his legs, and for the first time in 18 months, there was something in his expression that looked almost like curiosity. Marcus didn't make the call. The changes were subtle at first. Week 2, Daniel started sitting up straighter in his wheelchair. Better posture, more alert. Week 3, he began asking questions during therapy. Why are we doing this exercise? What muscle does this stretch? Engaged instead of passive. Week 4, Marcus came home at 11 p.m. and heard music. He stood in the darkened hallway, listening. Soft piano melody drifting from Daniel's room. Chopin. Sophia used to play Chopin. Marcus's throat tightened. He pulled out his phone, opened the security app. Daniel's room camera showed Elena sitting on the floor, her small Bluetooth speaker beside her. Daniel was in bed, eyes closed, but his fingers were moving slightly against his blanket, following the melody. "My mom used to play this," Daniel said quietly. "I know," Elena said. "Your dad told me." Marcus froze. He'd never told her that, had he? "She played it at night," Daniel continued. "When I couldn't sleep. She said music could fix anything." Smart woman. "I miss her." "I know you do, sweetheart." Daniel opened his eyes. "Do you miss someone?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "My little brother, Miguel. He died 3 years ago." "How?" "He drowned at the lake. I was supposed to be watching him." Her voice cracked slightly. "I looked away for just a minute." "It wasn't your fault." "Maybe, maybe not, but I carry it anyway." Elena looked at Daniel. "That's what grief does. It lives in us, becomes part of us. We don't get over it. We just learn to live with it." Daniel nodded like he understood. Like at 7 years old, paralyzed and motherless, he understood exactly what she meant. "Does it get easier?" he asked. "Some days. Other days it's like it just happened." Elena paused. "But you know what helps? Letting people in, not pushing everyone away because you're scared of losing them too." She wasn't talking to Daniel anymore. She was talking to Marcus, through the camera, knowing he was watching. Marcus closed the app. His hands were shaking. It happened on a Thursday. Marcus had a board meeting that morning. Critical. The kind where missing it could cost millions. But something made him leave early. Instinct, anxiety. He couldn't name it. He told his assistant he wasn't feeling well. Got in his car at 2:30. Started the drive home. The rain started 10 minutes later. Connecticut autumn storms were brutal. This one came fast, turning the sky black, dumping water like someone had torn open the clouds. Marcus's windshield wipers couldn't keep up. He slowed to 40, then 30, then 25 on the residential roads leading to his estate. His phone rang, the house line. He glanced at it. Didn't recognize the timing. Elena never called during the day unless it was important. He answered, "Yes? Mr. Chen." Elena's voice was tight with panic. "Daniel's fever spiked, 104 and climbing. I called 911, but they said 40 minutes in this weather. I've been trying to reach you." Marcus looked at his call log. 12 missed calls, all. In the last 30 minutes, his blood turned to ice. "I'm 5 minutes away," he said. "I'm coming." The line went dead. Marcus pressed the accelerator. His Mercedes hydroplaned slightly. He didn't care. 4 minutes. 3. He turned into his driveway doing 50, and that's when he saw her. Elena, running through his flooded lawn, rain hammering down, her clothes plastered to her body, her hair in her face, and in her arms, wrapped in what looked like his own bedroom comforter, was Daniel, his small body against her chest, her arms locked around him like she'd die before she let go. She was running toward the road, toward the hospital 3 miles away, like she actually thought she could carry a 50-pound child 3 miles through a storm. Marcus slammed the brakes, threw open his door. "What the hell are you doing?" Elena spun. Her face was streaked with rain and tears, and something that looked like desperation. "Mr. Chen," she was gasping, out of breath. "Daniel's burning up. Fever spiked to 104. I called 911, but they said 40 minutes in this storm. I called you 12 times. Marcus grabbed his phone, stared at those 12 missed calls, all while he'd been sitting in traffic, irritated about the weather, thinking about the board meeting he'd left early. "The car," Marcus said hollowly. "Why didn't you take the car?" Elena's eyes flashed, anger, raw and honest. "I don't have keys to any of your cars, Mr. Chen. You never gave them to me. The gate code, the garage code, nothing." The words hit like bullets. She was right. Marcus had given her access to his house, to his son, to every responsibility, but no actual power, no keys, no codes, no way to act in an emergency, because he didn't trust her, because he didn't trust anyone. And now his son was burning up in the rain because Marcus had built a fortress so secure his own caregiver couldn't escape it. Marcus looked at Daniel. His son's face was flushed deep red, his small body trembling, his eyes half closed and glassy. And this woman, this stranger Marcus, had watched through cameras, suspected of every possible betrayal, paid $45,000 to follow protocols and nothing more, had been carrying his child through a storm, trying to save him, fighting for him when his own father had been unreachable. "Get in the car," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "Now." Elena climbed in the back seat, cradling Daniel against her chest. His head lolled on her shoulder. She pressed her palm against his forehead and whispered something Marcus couldn't hear. A prayer, maybe. Marcus drove like a man possessed, through flooded roads, through red lights, past speed limits that meant nothing compared to the small boy dying in his back seat. "How long has he been like this?" Marcus demanded. "Started this morning, low fever at breakfast. I gave him Tylenol, monitored it every hour." Elena's voice was steady now, focused. By noon, it was 101. Called the pediatrician. She said, "Watch it, bring him in." If it hit 103, at 1:30, it was 103.5. I called her again. She was at another hospital, said to call 911. And they said 40 minutes, maybe longer with the storm. Elena's voice cracked. "He was at 104 by 2 o'clock, Mr. Chen. I couldn't just wait. I couldn't." "You did the right thing." Elena looked up, surprised. Marcus met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "You did exactly the right thing." Her face crumpled. She pressed her forehead against Daniel's hair and started crying. Silent tears, the kind that come from exhaustion and terror and relief all at once. Marcus drove faster. The hospital emergency room was chaos. The storm had caused accidents across 3 counties. Ambulances lined up outside, people in the waiting room holding bloody towels against their heads. But when Marcus carried Daniel through those doors, Elena beside him, both of them soaking wet, a triage nurse took one look and called for immediate assistance. Pediatric patient, high fever, possible sepsis. They took Daniel from Marcus's arms, put him on a gurney, wheeled him through double doors that swung shut between them. Marcus stood there dripping water on linoleum floors, his $3,000 suit ruined, his hands empty. Elena swayed slightly. Marcus caught her elbow. "Sit down," he said. "I'm fine. You're about to pass out. Sit." He guided her to a chair. She collapsed into it. A nurse appeared with blankets. Marcus wrapped one around Elena's shoulders. She didn't seem to notice. "He's going to be okay," she whispered, more to herself than to Marcus. "He has to be okay." Marcus sat beside her, stared at those double doors, his mind replaying everything, the missed calls, 12 of them, while he'd been annoyed about traffic. Elena running through his lawn, carrying his son, because Marcus hadn't trusted her enough to give her keys. That moment when she'd looked at him with pure anger. "You never gave them to me." She was right about everything. An hour passed, then another. Elena shivered despite the blanket. Marcus bought her coffee from a vending machine. She took it but didn't drink it, just held it, letting the warmth seep into her frozen hands. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly. Elena looked at him. "For not answering, for not giving you the keys, for—" His voice broke. "For everything. Mr. Chen, he could have died, because I didn't trust you, because I was so busy protecting him from people who might hurt him that I couldn't see the one person actually trying to save him." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You've been hurt before, I understand that." "That's not an excuse." "No, but it's a reason." She finally took a sip of coffee. "We all build walls, Mr. Chen. The question is whether we're brave enough to tear them down when someone worthy shows up." Before Marcus could respond, a doctor emerged. "Mr. Chen?" Marcus shot to his feet. Elena beside him. "Your son has a severe kidney infection, UTI, that spread. Another hour, maybe 2, and we'd be looking at sepsis, possible kidney failure." The doctor's voice was calm but serious. "But we caught it in time. He's on IV antibiotics. We'll keep him overnight for observation, but he's going to be fine." Marcus's legs nearly gave out. Elena caught his arm, steadied him. "Can we see him?" Marcus asked. "Room 304. He's asking for both of you." Daniel looked so small in that hospital bed, IVs in his arm, monitors beeping softly, but his eyes were open, clearer already. "Dad," he said softly. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides, sat in the chair beside the bed, took Daniel's hand. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." Daniel looked past him. "Elena?" She stood in the doorway, still soaked, still shivering. "I'm here too, sweetheart. You carried me." "I did. Through the rain. I'd carry you through a hurricane if I had to." Elena's voice cracked. "You're going to be okay, Daniel. You hear me? You're going to be fine." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't leave me. Never. I'll never leave you." Marcus watched his son look at Elena with absolute trust, complete faith, the kind of bond that forms when someone proves, not with words but with actions, that you matter more to them than comfort, than safety, than anything. And Marcus realized something that made his chest crack open. Elena hadn't just saved Daniel's life today. She'd been saving it every single day for a month. With patience, with presence, with the kind of love that shows up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. While Marcus had watched through cameras, Elena had actually cared, and Daniel knew the difference. Daniel came home 3 days later, Marcus took the week off work. First time in 2 years he'd used more than a single day of leave. His board was shocked. His CFO asked if everything was okay. Marcus said yes, and meant it. He gave Elena keys to everything, all 3 cars, gate codes, garage, his personal cell number programmed into speed dial. "Call me for anything," he said, "anytime, day or night." Elena nodded, professional as always, but her eyes were softer now. Like maybe she was starting to believe he meant it. The house felt different. Marcus worked from home, set up his laptop in the dining room instead of his locked office, close enough to hear Daniel's voice down the hall, close enough to be present. He watched Elena less through cameras now, watched his son more in person. One afternoon he found them in the living room. Elena was sitting on the floor, Daniel's legs in her hands, moving them through that walking pattern she'd been doing for weeks. "Can I try?" Marcus asked from the doorway. Elena looked surprised. "Of course." She showed him the movement, left, right, steady rhythm. "You're reminding his brain what walking feels like, building neural pathways." Marcus knelt down, took his son's small legs in his hands. Started the pattern. "Like this?" "Perfect," Elena smiled. "Keep talking to him while you do it. Tell him what you're doing. Why it matters." Marcus looked at Daniel. His son was watching him with wide eyes. "Your legs are strong," Marcus said quietly. "Even if they don't work the same way, we're teaching your brain new paths, new possibilities." Daniel's chin trembled. "You really think I could walk again?" Marcus paused. Every instinct screamed to manage expectations, protect him from disappointment, repeat what the doctors said. But he looked at Elena. She gave him the smallest nod. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that you're capable of more than anyone knows, including the doctors, including me." He kept moving Daniel's legs. "And I'm sorry I stopped believing that." Daniel reached out, touched Marcus's face. "You're really here?" "I'm here, buddy. I'm staying." 3 months later, something shifted. Marcus was working at the dining room table, Elena making lunch in the kitchen, when he heard it. A crash from the living room. Both of them ran. Daniel was on the floor beside his wheelchair. He'd fallen, that much was obvious. But he wasn't crying, he was laughing. "Daniel!" Marcus dropped to his knees. "Are you hurt? What happened?" "I stood up," Daniel said breathlessly. "Dad, I actually stood up. My legs held me for like 3 seconds before I fell." Marcus stared at him. "You stood?" "By myself. No help." Daniel's face was glowing. "Elena's been practicing with me. We didn't tell you because we weren't sure if it would work, but Dad, I stood." Marcus looked at Elena. She had tears streaming down her face. "Show him," she whispered. Daniel gripped the armrests of his wheelchair, took a breath and pushed. His legs shook violently. His whole body trembled, but he rose, inch by inch, until he was standing, upright, on his own 2 feet, 5 seconds, maybe 7. Then his legs gave out. Marcus caught him. "Did you see?" Daniel gasped against his father's chest. "Did you see me, Dad?" Marcus couldn't speak, could only hold his son and sob. The doctors said impossible. The doctors said never, but here was his boy, standing, fighting, refusing to accept the limitations the world placed on him, because one woman believed he could. That night, after Daniel was asleep, Marcus found Elena in the kitchen. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Because you needed to see it yourself, needed to believe it was real." Marcus leaned against the counter. "I've been thinking about making this permanent, your position, not as a caregiver, as family." He met her eyes. "I want you to stay, not because I'm paying you, because Daniel needs you, because He stopped. "Because we both need you." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Chen." "Marcus, please." Marcus, she smiled softly. I'm not going anywhere. That boy in there, he's my family now, whether there's a paycheck or not. There will be a real salary, benefits, your own space, renovated however you want, and keys to everything. He paused. I know I can't undo the past months, the suspicion, the surveillance, the walls I built. You were protecting him and yourself. I was hiding, Marcus's voice cracked, from grief, from guilt, from being a real father, but you showed me what showing up actually looks like. Elena touched his hand briefly. You're showing up now, that's what matters. 6 months later, Daniel took his first steps, real steps, across the living room from his wheelchair to Elena's outstretched arms. 10 feet, 12 steps. Marcus filmed it on his phone, hands shaking so badly the video was barely usable, but he didn't care. Because his son, his paralyzed son, the boy doctor said would never walk, was walking, not perfectly, not without help, but walking. Later that night, Marcus stood in Daniel's doorway watching him sleep. The yellow nursery Sophia had painted sat empty no longer. They'd moved Daniel back in last month. Elephants and giraffes on the walls, his mother's memory surrounding him. Elena appeared beside Marcus. They stood together in comfortable silence. Thank you, Marcus whispered, for not giving up on him, on us. That's what family does, Elena said simply. Marcus thought about that word. Family. It wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was the person who showed up in the storm, who carried your child when you couldn't, who believed in miracles when everyone else accepted impossible. Sometimes family was the stranger who became something more. Elena? Daniel's sleepy voice called from inside. She moved to his bedside. I'm here, sweetheart. Will you sing the song Mom used to sing? Elena looked at Marcus. He nodded, eyes burning. She began humming. That same lullaby, the one Sophia used to play on piano, and Marcus stood there, watching this woman comfort his son, and realized something profound. He'd spent 2 years building walls, cameras, control, trying to protect what remained of his broken family. But healing didn't come from walls. It came from opening doors, from letting someone in, from being brave enough to believe that not everyone leaves, that some people stay, that love, real love, shows up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Marcus walked into that room, sat on the other side of Daniel's bed, took his son's hand, and for the first time in 2 years, they were a family again. Not the family they'd lost. Something different, something new, but family nonetheless. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me what moment hit you hardest. And remember, miracles don't always look like lightning from heaven. Sometimes they look like someone refusing to give up on you, someone who carries you through the storm, someone who stays. That's the real miracle. See you in the next story.